Good evening. I will call to order the Finance Committee meeting on February 23rd, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. We have two items on the evening agenda: proposed amendment to City Code Chapter 125 and a FY22 mid-year transfer request from several departments. I'd also like to welcome Council Brown to the Finance Committee. Welcome. And with that, I will begin the meeting by going to the second item on the agenda, which is order number 22-100-8509, FY22 mid-year transfer request in the amount of $1,652,616 from several departments to and from other accounts as outlined in the transfer sheet submitted by Mayor Vigil. And I will begin by reading the letter submitted by the Mayor. Honorable President Ossing and councilors, enclosed for your review and approval are mid-year transfer requests totaling $1,652,616 from several city departments, as well as letters detailing the purposes as follows. Auditor Diane Smith has compiled a transfer request in the amount of $1,439,076 to cover the cost of our fully executed contractual bargaining agreements. The fire department is the only union not included, as this contract has yet to be fully negotiated. This transfer will also cover the $500 vaccine incentive payment for all eligible city and school employees. Our office is requesting a transfer for $6,000 to cover the public service employment program for June. Funding will come from events coordinator line item. The legal office will require a transfer for $15,000 for claims and judgments. The building department will require a transfer for $23,540 for outstanding invoices for contract services. The Human Resources Department anticipates a shortfall of $43,000 to cover the cost of planned training for fiscal year and pre-employment physicals. The Fire Department will require a transfer for $5,000 for equipment repair and maintenance. And the Department of Public Works is requesting a transfer in the amount of $121,000 to cover various expenses. I anticipate there will be questions, and my staff and I look forward to discussing at a future Finance Committee meeting. Sincerely, Arthur G. Vigil, Mayor. And I will begin with the first item, which is the contractual agreement of the $1.4 million. I'll open that up to council members if they have any questions in regards to the contractual agreement. Transfer, rather. Nope. Oh, Council Furman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question. If this, according to the letter, includes the vaccine incentive payment, will we get numbers again from the mayor's office about how much of that was used, how many people took advantage of that payment?
I will ask the mayor to come up, please, and answer that. Because I know it is a one-time incentive amount, but yes, good question.
Thanks, Council. I didn't get a question.
No problem. I'm happy to repeat it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for joining us this evening. I was curious around the $500 vaccine incentive payment, and if once those have been given out, I know it's a one-time payment, if the council would be informed about how many people took advantage of that or what the total cost was.
Yeah, I can send out information. We have two different, we're doing it in two allotments. One, basically the people that are already vaccinated. They submit their vaccination card to their department head, who brings them to HR. HR will be handling all the cards, and they'll be receiving a payment toward the end of this fiscal year. The next group, to give them enough time to go through the entire process, because my requirement was both vaccine shots plus the booster, they will be receiving it toward the fall. So there's going to be two different groups of payments.
Thank you. No, I think that's a really great idea. I'm glad to hear it. And we know there's all the wonderful clinics that are happening already at City Hall, so it'll be very easy for folks to get it right here in the city. Great. So thank you.
Thank you, Council Furman. Council Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along those same lines, Mayor, I guess I'm curious why money is coming to pay for that specific part under the undesignated instead of using some of the COVID funds that came from the state?
To be honest with you, I didn't want to get into the breakdown of the COVID because there's a lot of restrictions to that. So if we're using it for other things, it goes through a lot easier as far as the ARPA money goes. We're hoping to do one purchase. They changed the rules a few times on the ARPA money. What they've come out with recently is the first $10,000 you receive is for revenue loss. So we don't have to calculate anything for the first $10,000. The balance of it you have to allocate out to the breakdowns of what they tell you have to use it for. We're going to basically use the additional money for one pump station and the entire $12 million is gone. So we don't have to work through all that accounting and reporting and everything else. We're going to be able to do it real simply. If you break down and start doing incentive pays and first responder pay, there's all kinds of additional criteria for salary limits. And when I started going through it, there's so many gray areas of who was our primary people last year. And then looking at the salary limits, that we weren't getting many to come through and qualify. So I figured this was a way to use some of that money without breaking it down into ARPA, but using some incentive for all the employees in the city. Most of them have been really good about providing the card if they've had vaccines. Others are kind of using it as, for a long time now, if you were vaccinated and you were with a close contact, you just watch your symptoms. If you weren't vaccinated and you were in a close contact, you went home for 5 days. So we had some that decided, oh, I've been next to someone that had COVID, that I was in a close contact, so I'm going home for 5 days. Well, we thought you were vaccinated. No, I haven't been vaccinated. So to get around that, we're hoping my guess is we're not going to get anyone to get the vaccine for $500, but we'll probably get the vaccine card for $500.
Yeah. And I understand the desire to give it to them, and I think it's a great idea too. I was just more curious about not using the other funding. I do have a couple of other questions, if I may. And one's more just a general. I know you're using a little over half of what's needed for paying for all of these salary increases because of the contracts. And I'm guessing it's because some of these had to go back a whole year, and so there wasn't enough put into reserve for salary?
There's we agreed to an additional 1%, and what we did was, it was really paid as a signing bonus, as opposed to putting it in the employee's base, so it's a one-time payment. So if you look at the contracts, we really have two sets of contracts, one for our public safety employees and then one for the balance of the city, or the balance of the city side. The first responders or the police and fire, I put on the table a 222 increase for their contract moving forward. In addition to that, I went back to them and provided them with a 1% one-time only bonus, signing bonus. The reason I did that is because with negotiations with the other unions, we ended up settling for a 122 with a 2% signing bonus. So it was 7% over 3 years. I wanted to make the police and fire department or the police department whole, so they were receiving 7% over 3 years. The only one that has not been settled at this point, but it's been put on the table, and I believe we have another negotiation session set up, is fire.
Thank you. And then my last question is again related to the contracts and more a comment for the state in their wisdom of adding another holiday to the list of holidays. We now have to pay for Juneteenth, which I love holidays as much as the next person, but I did notice in the internal transfers that there was a transfer to pay for the police holiday to cover that. I don't know if it's in any of the other transfers that are on our books, or if that will be coming at a future date. That's almost $50,000 just for police. Do you have any idea what the whole city's cost is going to be?
Well, it was interesting because the language in different contracts is different. So we had some bargaining units, like the fire department, that actually received it last year because of the way their contract was written. Some of the other contracts were going to be required to get it this year. There were some contracts, like the MMEA, most of them in this building, that it was silent. So we were given legal advice that if it's silent, the city hall is closed because it's a federal holiday and a state holiday, but you're not required to pay the employees for that. So what we did is we negotiated similar language to all the contracts, so everyone will be getting paid for the additional holiday. But initially, different contracts had different language in it. So if you look at them, there was also a discrepancy about New Year's Eve and Christmas Eve. The contracts were silent on celebrating Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve on a Saturday. So again, they weren't getting Friday off for Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. So when we came out with the offer to the bargaining units, they all settled right away when we did Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, Juneteenth, and the wage pattern that we agreed to. So they're all the same.
Thank you. And will the city's website, that I believe has the contracts, be updated to include these changes?
I believe they're all on there, aren't they? They are on,
okay.
All on.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Orme. Councilor Orme.
Thank you. So to go on with what you're discussing, so you mentioned the 2% for 3 years. And is that uniform pretty much with all the negotiations that were done with the other unions? Are we looking at 2, 2, and 2 in most of the unions, or is it different?
No, police police is 222 plus the 1% bonus. All the other unions in the city, including the non-union employees, are 122. Let me change that. They were settled as a 2% bonus and a 022. I went back to all of them, and we're doing a retroactive back to July 1st for a 1% increase on their base. So again, everyone's the same 7%. The only difference is police and offered to fire, they get 2% in their base the first year, everyone else has a 1%. But they all end up with 3% for the year.
And thank you for that answer, because I agree with you. The uniformity is important when you're working amongst your own staff within the city. It's nice to see that it's uniform. So thank you for that. And I will be as interested as I mentioned earlier from Councilor Perlman about the incentive to see. I believe you had mentioned when you brought out the COVID reports, we're about 80 to 85% vaccinated within city employees. I thought you said that.
So I believe,
maybe not.
When I look on tomorrow night, I'm hoping we were very, very close to being at 90% with one vaccine and about 79 or 80% fully vaccinated. So.
Thank you. And I think I agree the incentive is an excellent idea.
And again, there were different communities. We had long discussions with other mayors about this. All right, what are you doing? And everyone was trying to piece together something. And we looked at the Haverhill agreement, and Mayor Fiorentini's been up there for a long time, so I respected his opinion. But his agreement was about 12 pages long. It's like, Jim, I'm not doing a 12-page agreement. Mine's like 3 paragraphs, and I sent it to all the unions, and they all got them back pretty quickly. There were no changes or anything. There was no negotiation. This is a additional offer over the contract, and I think they all saw it as that. So we've received them all except for one. So
thank you for that.
That's on the city and the school side. Between both sides, there's only one contract we haven't received back yet. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you for those answers. I have other questions when we get to the other portions of the request. Mr. Chair, are we voting one item at a time?
No, we can vote at the total. Of course, if something changes at the end, we would obviously subtract that amount, but yes, we can do it as a
Okay,
total.
so as I say, I have some other questions
No,
as we
yeah, and
go through
what
it.
my plan is, we'll take each item up and we can discuss them while the mayor's here. Yes. Councilor Dumas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So who is eligible for the 500?
I'm
Who
sorry.
is eligible for the 500 vaccination? I believe elected
All
officials are
full-time
not.
employees, not
That's
elected
full-time.
officials. I'm out and you're out.
Right, and I'm assuming school committee.
Yeah,
so-
everyone else did.
I would hope.
And I forget the date we put on that. Does anyone remember the date? Okay. Full-time employees, January
Full-time.
1st,
Full-time.
not elected officials.
So no paras or
No,
part-time?
Full-time employees. So, yeah, well, if they're, we made it, we had to tweak
Okay.
one group in the schools, and I forget who it was. The superintendent tweaked one of the groups in the schools.
Okay. I just don't want to miss anyone who was there during the
Yeah.
very difficult times, regardless of employment
Yeah.
status. Like, I just think that's very,
Yeah.
it's just so sticky. you
No,
know?
and some of the communities, what they did is they did one number for full-time employees and one number for part-time employees.
Right.
But we have part-time employees that work 20 hours a week and part-time employees that work 5 hours a week.
Right.
So, I mean, we could have gone all over the place.
Sure.
It was just finally decided in my office with a few of us there, this is what we're doing and we're moving forward. Because we would have been talking about it
Right.
forever.
So regardless of if 5 hours, if as long as you're part-time, you're still going to get the 250?
No, they're not getting, we didn't do that. We
You didn't
did
do
full-time employees. only.
Just full-time?
Yep.
But I thought, did I hear
There
part?
was one tweak for one of the school units, and I don't have
Okay.
that information. with me.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Dumas. Committee set, what we'll do is we'll go to the next item, if that's fine. Okay, the next item is $6,000 to cover public service employment. Any questions on that? Council Orm?
And I may have follow-up questions with some other requests as well, but wherever I went through this, I see a lot of vacancies. So this
Yep.
one indicated a vacancy of the event coordinator.
Yep.
Curious, is that a position that is not needed any longer, or is it just because of COVID?
No, for the most part, I eliminated almost all part-time employees through the COVID period, and some of the library staff was hired back, but the others have not been at this point. And we're just, we're doing the budget now for next year, and we're trying to figure out, all right, who do we need back and who don't we need back?
And on this one item, do we need an event coordinator? Is that a
Well,
position
we've
that?
been talking about it, we're not sure, is it something that we can handle internally? It was great to have someone up there. They handled all the events throughout the year, especially when you get into the larger things like, obviously the parade. But she handled all the events, and she's moved on, but we just started discussing it for the next fiscal year.
I guess we'll wait for the budget to see where that goes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Roby?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is more on where it's going to. It's going to summer employment. And when I looked back through the records, in December's report, there was $10,000 in that line. Now there's $6,000.
Yeah.
Who's getting paid out of summer employment at this point in time?
We've had some interns in the building doing different stuff, and on the city side, and which departments? Building department. HR and building. So we've been using some of that, but this is to get us through June for the first month of the employment. Otherwise, we'll wait till July.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Roby. Councilor Perlman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I had a similar question because I saw the June 30th, so it makes sense if there's been interns in the building already. And just want to say I think it's such a stellar program and would love to, have us interact more with those interns as well. And just kind of to get a sense for last year, how many interns were able to participate in the summer program?
In the summer, there was 12 to 15. So we have two different groups. We have the high school kids and we have the college kids. And Partnership for a Skilled Workforce funds a chunk of it for our high school kids. They really run most of the program, just provide us the kids. But then we have the college internship also.
Yeah, no, I think it's a wonderful program, and I was just curious, you know, how much people were being paid hourly given the amount and how many interns, so.
Yeah, no, it's run really well. I just encourage all department heads, if they're hiring someone, that's great, but they're not being hired to sit in the corner and do nothing. They're being hired to do those jobs that you don't have time to do.
Right, right, and I know we got to meet many of them at the summer barbecue, and I know they all seem to very much enjoy the experience, so I'm glad that we're continuing to offer it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Perlman. We can move down to the next item. Oh, Councilor Orm?
I'm a recipient of being an intern in Marlborough back a long time ago. I interned for the Board of Health 3 summers through my college years. The first year I wasn't paid. I actually volunteered and wanted to learn, but I presume these interns are not sitting in the corner, that the department heads, whoever they are helping them to learn as well. You know, there's a give and take. I've had interns through my years in my profession, and I think it's all because I learned how important the value is of interns, as just mentioned by Council Perlman. But there is that extra time that I think we need to thank the department heads too, because it takes more out of their schedule taking on an intern.
Yep. Because
they're trying to teach them as well. But indeed, they do work, but it's a give and take. And I think we need to thank the department heads, and I hope to see the continuation of this as you noted. Thank you.
Good point, Councilor Orm. Next item is from the legal office for a transfer of $15,000 for claims and judgments. Any questions regarding that? We'll move on to the next transfer is from the building department. Will require a transfer in the amount of $23,540 for outstanding invoices for contract services. Councilor Orm.
Wait, anyone else first?
Oh, Councilor Orm.
You sure? Okay. Yeah, I know, but I don't want to keep jumping ahead of people. Just if I could understand a little bit about the contract services named 4-Leaf, what they actually are for. I remember seeing it before. I just have forgotten what the 4-Leaf does.
They're one of the only companies we found that actually provide us licensed inspectors.
That's what it is.
So if we are short-staffed or we are, we have a few of the large sets of plans that come in, we'll bring them over. We've been short-handed now for a while. We have just brought someone on probably 2 months ago, a couple months ago. So we're finally fully staffed, and now it's a question of just making sure he gets trained as quickly as possible. He's a licensed inspector, so that's great. But we'll use them if a couple of these projects, move forward real quickly. My advice to them is always get through the plans and get them out the door. I don't want plans sitting around up there. I don't want applications for, residential decks sitting around up there. I want the stuff out the door. So if we need some help to do that, if you look at the revenue sheets, we're way ahead of our projections, so that's great for the building department. And as long as they're bringing in the revenue, that means they're providing the services, and it's money well spent to get it out there timely.
And one other question. I know they're trying to work towards electronic permits. Is 4-Leaf capable of working with that program as well? I don't know if you or the building commissioner.
I'm sorry, which program?
Coordinating electronic permits so I could file online.
Yes. Actually, our building commissioner is one of the people heading up that program.
We chatted, actually.
Worked with it in the past, and so that's the great news, and this one better work.
I wasn't asking that, but the question I have is 4-Leaf. Are they capable, once we have a program on hand, are they familiar with these electronic programs?
Yes, they are. Yes.
Okay, that's all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Dumas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is the building department still short-staffed? Is the building department still short-staffed? Are you fully?
We're still short-staffed.
So do you anticipate? Do you anticipate utilizing 4-Leaf next budget?
Yes, quite possibly.
Okay.
As the mayor spoke of, we have several large projects coming down the pipeline, and we also have other programs regarding multifamily dwellings that need to be inspected in a 5-year basis that has been lax, and so we're trying to move that process forward and get into compliance. So yes,
Will that be included in your budget for this coming?
Yes.
yes.
So we'll see a line item for 4-leaf? So we don't have to
Contract
do-
services.
Right. So we won't necessarily see a budget transfer this time next year, if we can plan
Well, I
it.
hope, well,
Hopefully.
put it this way, if they all come in, you'll see a budget transfer, but that means everything's moving forward.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
It's just a question, to bring people on full-time, if it does slow down, then, you know, we have them on board. So I
Right.
don't like laying people off, but if I can fill the gap with some contract services, I'd much rather do that. Plus finding inspectors right now, we've had an ad out forever.
Sure.
And we're still pushing, because I know I talked to you about the code enforcement and
Right.
bringing someone in. And
Desperately.
we're trying to find someone licensed, so the ad is still out there right now. We actually reinserted the ad to try to draw some more activity.
So the goal is to not use 4-leaf as much, is that?
Correct.
Okay.
Last year, there was a lot.
Which is good if we need them.
Yeah, but we were short a couple people last year,
Right.
so.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Dumas. Councilor Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a follow-up question to Councilor Dumas's point, is that common for other communities to use a service like 4-leaf as frequently as the city of Marlborough has been doing, given short staffing?
I'm gonna guess probably not, because most communities don't have the activity we have. I mean, that's my guess, but again, finding staff, especially in the building department, has been difficult for the 10 years that I've been here.
It's a good-
I mean, it's just, and to find license inspectors, I misspoke at the last meeting we had with all the inspectors, because I said, you know, we haven't hired a licensed inspector in years. Usually we have to train them and get them licensed, because they can't get a license unless they're working for a municipality. So the state doesn't help you out and allow some of our contractors to get licensed. And I was corrected. The new guy we hired is licensed, and I was pretty happy about that.
No, that's good to hear. It seems like an issue that the MMA, should be more proactive on. And I know with our succession planning, it sounds like it fits in really well to continue to license people. Thank you.
Good question, Councilor Perlman. Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I, again, have the question on where the money's going to. So I looked back in September, we did a transfer of $70,000 out of Assistant Building Commissioner and put it in contract services with a letter from the commissioner stating it was to pay for 4-leaf contract. Minimum of 30 hours a week, $90 an hour. So this is going into building professional and technical services. Why not contract services?
I'm gonna guess, I'm not gonna guess, I'm gonna ask the auditor.
The contract was funded with 2 line items, or 2 line items in the building department's budget. One is professional and technical, and one is contract services. So we just chose this line over the other. But they're both going towards that contract.
Okay, and is the Assistant Building Commissioner the person who you're discussing, talking about getting hired?
That one's still vacant at this point.
So then I guess the question becomes, if we're paying 4-leaf more than we would be paying a person
Right.
as an employee, do we need to raise the salary?
That's always an option, but you can't go backwards when
Right, but for
the
the
market
budget
changes.
going
Right now,
forward, or?
the market is crazy for everybody, and so if we can get by with 4-leaf, calling them when we need them, then that's probably the route we're gonna go right now. But if one of our inspectors steps up to the plate, or we hire someone that has the qualifications to be the next commissioner, the whole thing when we did the assistant commissioner was to have that succession planning that we've talked about, and now you have the report on. So I want to make sure that Tim gets hit by a car outside, that assistant is ready to take over. So it's not just to fill it with another inspector. That's the intent.
Make me a beneficiary.
Thank
I've
you.
used other department heads in the past with that example, so it's his turn. There's a number out there that would like to see that happen.
And the only comment I'd like to make, Mr. Mayor, is I know there's an incredible amount of traffic that goes through that office. A lot of funds and fees come in. My only concern is trying to avoid if there's late fees on invoices in the future, but that's a small thing for something that's not timely paid for an invoice.
Which,
For the 23,540, it was an overlooked invoice? For this transfer?
No, that was, Mr. Commissioner, you want to come up and explain that?
And I realize there's a lot that goes through that office with fees, and they do a wonderful job. It's just a
Let the
question.
Commissioner explain that one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome. If you can repeat the question one more time.
Yeah, my
Last year's
only,
bill.
my only concern is going forward. You do a lot of revenue coming in with fees, not seeing any overlooked invoices to have to pay any late fees or interest or things like that in the future. That's it.
I understand, yes. It was an oversight in this case, and it was a transition of personnel.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, moving on to the next item is from the Human Resources Department. A shortfall of $43,000 to cover costs of planned training for fiscal year and pre-employment physicals. Any questions on that? Council Wong.
Thank you. The question would be is, and you mentioned it, it's hard to find staff nowadays. I was shocked that we've been in need of 50 full-time, part-time, and temporary employees since July 1st. That's probably why you're asking for all this training, which is needed. I support the transfer, but I didn't realize that we went through that many people over the past, what, 8 months? No, yeah, 8 months.
Yeah, no, if you come in the building during the day and pop into a few of the offices, we got a lot of new staff inside.
I know.
This training, conference and training is mainly for Munis and Microsoft. We're going through a Munis upgrade right now, and we're gonna run Munis training program for the people that use it. So this is kind of, we're just trying to keep them on top of, the changes we're making. We're also doing the Open Gov, so, that's been taking up a lot of the commissioner's time. That's what he's been doing. So.
And if I may, one additional question. It's broken down, which is good. Medical exams, 14,000, conference and training, 13. I just have a question on contract services. What is the contract services? What do they do in that line item under HR, the 16,000?
Well, that's the HR director.
Is she here?
She sure is.
Oh, I didn't see her. Oh, there you are. Sorry, I didn't see you back there.
Thank you, Director. Good evening.
The contract services we use for hiring consultants to help with the promotional process. Because of the many people that have left, and we will be doing another promotional process for the fire department. And it wasn't anticipated that we would need to do a consultant or be doing it at this time, but we've had a few retirements, and we would like to run it in the spring so that we don't have the vacancies out there as long.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, through you to the HR Director, just curious, Ms. Purple, on the promotional program, is that something that a present employee would go to learn how to be the chief of a department or commissioner?
No, the promotional, excuse me, I do have the fire chief here, and he might be able to answer it a little bit better, but it does have to do with your different levels within the fire department, and they are going to test and then have an oral board and be there'll be people brought in to assist with that process to be promoted within the fire department. This is an internal process. This is not from the outside. This is our own fire personnel doing the testing and promotional process. Did I get it?
Thank you, by the way.
When we left civil service, we had to set up our own program for testing and for hiring practices, and we came up with agreements with the bargaining units for the process that we're using. So they actually take a test similar to civil service, but we use an outside agency to help us create that test. And then there's the regular interview process, just like if you were going to get a real job in a real company in the real world. So it's not just whoever scores the highest in the test gets the next job, but they actually go through a battery of interviews for both police and fire, and it's worked out really, really well, so.
Well, I thank you both for your answers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Council Perman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the HR Director. First, I want to really commend, 50 employees since July of 2021. That's extensive. It's only February 2022, so that's not even a full year. So I know it's a lot of work of your office and others in the city, so thank you so much for that. I was curious, since a lot of these expenses are related to sort of this new influx of employees, I'm anticipating that this would not be as high of a cost in the future. I don't know if you could speak to that, of what the cyclical nature of some of these costs might be moving forward.
Right, so the health, the medical exams, it's a little higher when you're dealing with police and fire, because they have, their exams are extensive. There's not only a physical, but they also do psychological, and so when you add in some of the extra testing that we go through for hiring public safety, it adds up. And both in police and fire right now, we're actually in the process right now of hiring police officers. So we'll be putting them through. I'm part of the committee that's doing the fire interviews and firefighter interviews. And so we're anticipating hiring them this spring. So when you add that into it, each person, it goes up exponentially. On top of that, we didn't anticipate hiring 50 new people, so we are higher than normal in general. So therefore, when we started looking at the numbers, we wanted to make sure we had enough to make sure we covered our bills for the remainder of this year.
Thank you, and the information in the letter was really helpful, so as those costs continue to move forward, including that in the updates is really useful, so thank you so much for your office's work.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree the information in the letter was helpful, but it's also confusing to me because your paragraphs talk about 14,000, 16,000, and 9,000, but your amounts in the actual transfer are 14, 13, and 16. And the mayor's letter says 39.
You know what, when we originally started it, at the beginning of the week, I had one set of numbers, and I didn't realize at the last minute we needed to make a change because in the end what it was, and we changed the number on the main part, and I realized we didn't alter the rest of the letter.
So it is 43,000
Yeah,
total.
so Christian,
the numbers are right.
Councilor Dumas just asked that question.
Okay.
The actual number, sorry, I was going to ask.
So the numbers in the top, and I apologize, I didn't update. Yeah, I had received some other information right as we were about to go to the council to put the packet together, and I.
Okay, and then I know my eyes are bad and they're getting worse, but I don't believe there is a number of 11820002, which is the clerk that the money's coming from. I believe it should be 116. Thank you.
Is that the account number? Apologies.
This number here, it is 1162.
It looks like an 8 to me, so that's what
I think it's just a bad, it's a bad copy.
It's a bad copy.
It's a bad copy.
Thank you.
Live copy machines.
We need toner.
That's what I'm saying. It's either my eyes or it's wrong. So, thank you.
We're not getting new machines.
I'm good, yeah.
Good, okay, then if we're all good, we'll go to the next item. The fire department will require a transfer for $5,000 for equipment, repair, and maintenance. Any questions in regards to that transfer? Okay, going down to the last item.
John, sorry.
Councilor.
Mr. Chair. I was waiting for everyone. I said, I'll wait and see if others have. I do have a couple questions. Just,
Councilor.
it's a good purpose. The fire inspector is the position I had. It's a vacancy created, the surplus on the budget form here. We don't have a fire inspector any longer, or?
We had trouble hiring the fire prevention officer and the fire inspector. Chief?
Good evening, Chief Breen. Up here, Mr. Chairman. That's fine, absolutely. Thank you.
Oh, I've read it.
Good evening, thank you, Mr. Chairman, council members, Kevin Breen, Marlborough Fire.
Chief, if I may, I was curious about, and the mayor was just noting it, the fire inspector. How is that position being handled right now if we're taking the surplus from that position? I presume that position is not intact at this point?
That's correct. That position is unfilled right now, Counselor. With the addition of our new Assistant Fire Chief, that is his #1 priority, to begin the process of posting and selecting an individual to fulfill the duties and responsibilities of a fire inspector. And that hasn't been done yet. That's why we had available funds in that line item.
And if I may, is that a one-person position, or is that combined with the fire prevention?
That is one individual position.
For just fire inspections?
That's correct.
Yeah, and I can imagine how busy.
The title hasn't been resolved yet, whether it's called fire inspector or fire prevention officer. We're open to whatever it's called.
It's interchangeable. I didn't know if one was a separate entity to the other one. So they're both the same?
Yes.
They do prevention and inspections?
Correct.
Okay, like programs too, would they do something if we had a fair, be at the fair to show?
Right, public fire education, there's a number of responsibilities this person will fulfill.
Okay, and if I may, I don't know, I just heard this on the radio last week, but there's a company in this area creating new fire protective underclothes so that they don't absorb chemicals during the fighting of a fire. It was on BZ, I'll try to find it, but I know you're very concerned about the appropriate laundering of our fire clothes, and that was very interesting. Someone, I think in Fall River, creating a new undergarment for firefighters.
I openly tell you, Counsel, I have not heard of that, and yes, I am interested, so I'll be on my Google machine looking at that.
If you can, I'll try to help. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you,
Just
Mr.
two
Mayor.
things on that, Counselor. We've done a couple things over the last couple of years. We actually have been using a cleaning, I don't know, I guess you could call them a laundry service, but it's the Clean All gear.
I see.
They come down and they've done that. And we also bought 2 washing machines. Well, they told me they were washing machines, so I figured, you know, $500 for a washing machine is good. But it's the clean gear also. So, you know, my feeling is whatever we can do to help out the department and the men and women down there. So we've been taking steps to make it safer down there.
And I appreciate the additional information. I know it's not on the agenda, but maybe in the next budget, we'll see something like that. Thank you all.
Thank you. Wonderful question, Councilor. Any further questions for the chief? Seeing none, I'll go to the next item, which is the last item on the transfer. Is from the Department of Public Works, requesting a transfer in the amount of $121,000 to cover various expenses. Any questions regarding that transfer? Councilor Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have several questions about this. I don't know if it's helpful for anyone from the department to come forward and sit in our lovely seat over here, but I was curious a little bit more information around, first, the sampling at the Hudson Street landfill. I know we've done a lot of work before to cap it additionally and wanted to know what the update was about the sampling. Is this just required, or has it reached a new level that we would need to do additional sampling?
Yeah, so the Westerly treatment plant just got its new permit, and part of that is additional sampling, especially for the industries we have, and that's specifically what this is. It'll be for testing, and then the consultant to evaluate everything and make recommendations.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And then if you could maybe provide some additional context on the police station upgrade and the consultant design services, of what those are necessarily referring to.
Which one was that?
The police station upgrade and the consultant design services. They're 2 separate line items.
Oh, okay. So that's the facilities item up at the top. The police station is for some replacement of flooring and some countertops.
Okay.
It's sort of a continuation. Some of them have been done, and this is a continuation.
Thank you. And then for the consultant design services, I know it refers to upcoming projects. Are these anticipated, or we know what those projects will be?
So we as you know, we got a grant for a project on Main/Weed Street. We're still in the concept phases of design for that, but we know that there's going to be some traffic signal equipment design, and that's something that's typically that's outside of our area of expertise, so we typically hire out at least that part of the design work.
Okay. And at this time, would that be the maximum amount requested, or we anticipate further funds needed for that particular item?
No, that would be all that we would need.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Perlman. Councilor Dumas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the last one that we did not talk about, since you guys are in the hot seat, being in Ward 3, Brigham Street lighting for Jericho Hill has been a long-withstanding issue regarding the lights stay on in the basketball court and they don't shut off. So I'm wondering if that money is going to be allocated to fix that issue, or do we have any insight as to when that will be resolved?
I don't have any information on the resolution, but this amount of money is for the parking lot lights. We have the poles, this is for the wiring. Some additional money we need for the wiring.
Councilor, if I can just address that, yes, that's been discussed between me and the commissioner, and we are working and resolving that.
Okay.
This past weekend, not this past weekend, because it was 80, but a few weekends ago when we had the snowstorm, I did tell them to leave them on for the night because of the situation, but we are working on making sure they're set up to go off at night.
Thank you. My constituent was at my salon today yelling at me.
Woody, we're taking care of it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm like, oh, I thought that was resolved, but apparently it's not. But if we could look into that, that would be great. Thank you, guys. But
Thank you, Councilor Dumas.
Thank you.
Councilor Orm.
I'm not for sure if I heard you right. When Council Perlman asked about the environmental compliance MPDES permit, I thought I heard Wesley treatment plant, but below that it says additional sampling for Hudson Street landfill.
That was the fourth line item. The Hudson Street landfill's the second line item.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So on the Hudson Street landfill, if I may, so that additional sampling, is that something that's being required by DEP for, what would that be for? Are they finding issues, or do they want more testing?
So we're in the final stages of design of the cap upgrades and permitting with DEP, and it is something that they added. They want a risk evaluation and some additional ambient air sampling to kind of model what's going to happen above the finished cap. It's just part of the final permitting that they want, so it was something that they added on this.
So that's music to my ears to hear that we're getting towards the final stages for the capping, which will be another, I'm sure, proposal coming down to the councilors for review, because I'm sure it's not going to be free.
No, we have funding in place for that. We've already had the bond approved.
Yes.
You know, we haven't got new numbers on it yet, but we do have a bond in place to do the work down there. We'll probably be looking for some changes to that. But some of the reason for the delay was we were pushing back to be able to utilize the property for different uses. You know, they basically wanted us to walk away from it after we capped it, and we told them we'd like to use it for something, we're not sure what. So we just wanted to do things appropriately for them to sign off so we could use it in the future.
And if I may, correct me if I'm wrong, was that bond for $3 million, or was it $2 million and $1 million?
It was just over $3 million.
$3 million, that's what I thought. Just something more of knowledge for the new counselor, and even myself, just to make sure I'm up to date on that, but it does need to be done. And I thank you for answering the questions, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Orm. Councilor Orm.
Sorry. All the vacancies, you know, when you read the side where the money's coming from, you know, Public Facilities Director, there's a lot of vacancies on that side, engineers. Where are we with that?
We've actually been making a lot of strides down there the last few months.
Okay.
We have 3 vacancies open. One, hopefully, we're going to fill fairly soon. One of them's open because of a movement, so we're never quite, when we just seem like we're getting there, then we lose a couple more, so.
Do we have a Public Facilities Director, if I may ask?
Yeah. Working on that now.
Working on, okay.
That's been posted, and we've done interviews on that, so.
Okay. Well,
but I think we were up to a dozen positions down there at one point, vacant. Yeah, and so we're knocking them off, but it's just.
Appreciate the answers, and I guess I'll end up with the fact that when that happens, the burden goes on the department heads, so I want to thank the department heads, the 2 sitting right here, and others for picking up that slack, because that's extra work for everyone. So never mind, they already got the stripes down on the streets tonight. I was coming up Stevens, I said, stripes, that means winter's still here. Thank you. I'll ask about the snow budget another time.
Thank you, Councilor. No further discussions. I will entertain a motion. I will second that.
Motion to approve.
I will second that. Motion's been made and seconded to approve order number 22-100-8509, FY22 mid-year transfer request in the amount of $1,652,616 from several departments to and from other accounts as outlined in the transfer sheet submitted by the mayor. All in favor? All in favor? It carries 5-0. Thank you. And we'll move on to the next item, order number 22-100-8512. Proposed amendment to City Code Chapter 125 Personnel Salary Schedule to increase the salary for a parking enforcement officer as submitted by Mayor Vigent as follows, and I will read the letter submitted by the mayor. Honorable President Ossing and councilors, please find enclosed for your review an order recommending a change to the City Salary Ordinance Chapter 125 for parking enforcement officer upon City Council approval. In May of 2020, the city adopted the recommended salary amendment that included increasing the parking enforcement officer and crossing guards to not to exceed $18 per hour. We have successfully found a great candidate for the parking enforcement position who stayed with us for about 6 months and has left for another job that paid him more. We have continued to post this position without success. We are recommending increasing the salary not to exceed $25 per hour and respectfully request it be considered in a timely fashion. Noted in the Collins Center Succession Planning Report, the City Council approval process regarding changes to positions in staffing is time-consuming and inefficient. I will like to work collaboratively with the City Council to update our outdated ordinance for staffing efficiency. It has been an ongoing issue and one that needs to be addressed so the city can remain competitive in today's labor market. We would like the opportunity to fill this parking enforcement officer as soon as possible to assist our Main Street business owners with adequate levels of street parking and give the Marlborough Police Department the ability to properly enforce parking regulations. Sincerely, Arthur G. Vigent, Mayor, and I will open that up to the council in regards to this. I know I feel very strong on these positions to retain employment, the succession planning as well for the Collins Center report, and trying to get good candidates to enforce these parking issues downtown. So I do like the idea that is going to up to $25, but I'll open that up to the committee.
Yeah, if I could just address it for a second. First of all, we're helping some of the downtown merchants, because some of the other downtown merchants are the ones that are parking on Main Street. So it's to encourage them not to do that, and the smart retailers obviously don't do that. But so we had someone for a while, and it was working real well because the phone was ringing regularly complaining that they were getting tickets. And I told most of them they should be thankful we haven't been able to find anyone for a couple of years. After a few months, and he seemed to be enjoying himself out there because it's a thankless job that you take a little bit of heat during the day.
Absolutely.
But he left for another position that was paying him a little bit more money. We continued to advertise the job. On a couple occasions, we thought we had someone, but the chief called me and said, no, that one's not going to work out. So we actually reached back out to this gentleman and said, you know, would you consider coming back if we raised it? And he said, yes, he would. There's no guarantee. I said, well, I'll start the process, and if you're available, we'd love to have you. If not, and we put a new number out there, maybe we can get somebody. So obviously this position will pay for itself as long as he gives out 1 ticket an hour, which shouldn't be an issue. Some merchants down here believe it's cheaper than parking in Boston, so I'm going to do it anyway, and so be it. I'm okay with that if they want to pay the tickets. But it's really, we really do need the turnover down here. And I think this is a way to do it. So
thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I agree with that sentiment absolutely. Councilor Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mayor, for the update, kind of the background information. I know specifically for the downtown area, even having those, you know, 15-minute kind of takeout situation parking areas. That seems to be another great avenue that we've been utilizing. I'm curious, I know in the letter it says that another job paid him more. Do we know what that other position was paying him in relation to the payment that he was receiving previously in Marlborough?
No, it had nothing to do with the city, so I didn't get into that.
Okay, I didn't know if we knew kind of what the going rate was for a position like that.
Well, I mean, a lot of communities will farm this out, you know, and bring an outside company in, and I'm not looking to do that. Again, we're not looking to have 4 people out there giving tickets all day long. We're looking just to make sure someone's out there. This is a 19-hour-a-week position. I think he was working less than that, but having someone out there, I've told him he can make his own hours as long as it's, you know, he's out there those 19 hours a week. I don't care if it's Tuesday morning and Wednesday afternoon. And like I said, it's to turn the traffic over for the parking on Main Street.
Well, I will say in the 6-month period he was here, I did see him in action near the library, and he was doing a good job indicating how long folks had been there. And just to clarify, if someone did receive a ticket, would it be a $25 ticket if they violated?
I think that's what we raised it to a couple of years ago.
We did believe, yeah.
So,
okay.
But it, you know, and we tried to work with everyone initially. Our parking clerk voided all the first tickets that came in from the businesses, the first ticket, and then she started enforcing the ones after that. But again, we're not looking for Sergeant Schultz out there. We're looking just to make sure some turn over. But he was enthusiastic and doing a great job for us. So we're hoping we get him back and we can pay him a little bit more.
Well, that's great to hear, and thank you for bringing this down. We definitely want to make sure the position is filled. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I can attest that he was a wonderful individual to work with, and I do know $18 an hour for someone that is bilingual downtown or throughout the city, you're not going to get someone for $18 an hour. So that's why I absolutely think that is the right move to move that to 25. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilor Orman.
And if I can lead on from that discussion about the salary or the hourly rate I hope it is competitive. You know, it's a tough job. It takes a special person to be a parking enforcement officer. Not an easy job. Usually people don't like you, and that's unfortunate because they're helping our businesses, as you said. And on the Traffic Commission agenda coming up this Friday, I've asked the chief to put on parking at corners, which are causing trouble for some of our businesses trying to get their trucks into their location, as well as danger to get out of a parking lot or something. So I'm hoping this program can expand, and not to be of a penalty type program, but maybe a reminder on the first one but not the second, just like he did with the first tickets. Again, I think and bilingual definitely, because I think sometimes people just don't understand the laws about how far you can park to a corner, as well as parking enforcement downtown. I know Friday I drove around and around twice and then I couldn't get into the parking garage up there because I had to go back up the street. That's why I went twice, and I finally went around and got to the third floor on the parking, or second floor on the parking garage. But again, there's no parking downtown. And then when I left, I see a car parked right to the corner at Florence Street in Maine, and a truck sitting on the sidewalk right behind the cars that back out. So I could see this growing into more than 19 hours. And again, not to be of a program with penalties, but reminders at first, and then if not, then yes, they get a ticket. But I would support this request, and if needed, I would ask that it come back to us if you're having trouble finding someone at this rate, and maybe someday looking at a 40-hour position. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I can also tell you that over the years, we've had 2 19-hour-a-week positions funded. I would gladly ask for another 19-hour-a-week position if in your retirement years now that you want to come down here and, you know, take this one on. You can walk around and talk to people. You can, you know.
If there's no other questions or discussion, I move to approve.
Thank you, Councilor Perlman. I will second that. Motion has been made and seconded to approve order number 22-100-8512, proposed amendment to City Code Chapter 125, Personnel Salary Schedule to increase the salary for the parking enforcement officer by adding to the salary schedule reference in 125-6 the following: parking enforcement officer not to exceed $25 per hour. Any further discussion? All carries.
I just have a quick question. Do you need suspensions on either one of these order items?
This hasn't been advertised.
We will not ask for a suspension on this, but thank you, Councilor Dumas, because I forgot to ask about suspension on the other one.
Well, obviously, the auditor would like, and the finance director would like to see it move forward, but as far as this one goes...
I will not be asking for a suspension on this because it does still have to go through the whole process of advertising.
Just want to cover
Good question, though,
just
Councilor.
covering all
It's
the
advertised. You moved to advertise it at the last meeting.
Yes,
So
it still has to be fully advertised.
It hasn't made its full.
It won't meet the 10-day requirement of charter, but it is
it's
scheduled for advertisement.
Okay.
We got a
So keep
snowstorm
looking.
coming. I'm not looking for them to come down here and hit cars in the snow, so...
But thank you, Councilor. Good point, Councilor. All right, so all in favor? It carries 5-0, and we will ask for a suspension for the mid-year transfer, Mr. President.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
Carries 5-0. I'll second that.
Thank you, councilors.
Thank you.
We adjourned at 7:31 PM. Thank you, councilors.
Oh,